So as part of the celebration for Jurassic Park's 30th anniversary, Universal has released, via Peacock, an unofficial retelling of the original Jurassic Park in Lego form. I don't know where it's available outside of the US, but everybody loves the ocean. That's all I'll say. I digress. Today we'll have a little review and discussion on this unofficial retelling. There will be spoilers, I guess you'd call them, but given what goes on is 99.9% identical to the original Jurassic Park, I suspect spoilers are probably going to be okay. If you somehow haven't seen Jurassic Park and you're watching this for some reason, please go watch Jurassic Park and then come back. So, what's the setup here? Well, we join Lego Ian Malcolm at his home as he decides to tell us the story of Jurassic Park via one of his journals. He's going to be narrating the entire thing, and he does appear to be the only voice actor who's returned for the production. We're going to largely follow the same story beats throughout this thing, though given it's only 22 minutes long, the scenes are of course heavily truncated, and lots of scenes have been outright cut. The film does a pretty good job though, I'd say, of hitting the important highlights. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Anyway, we meet most of the crew on the flight over. Their voices are okay. Grant doesn't sound quite right, and Nedry, who's obviously going to come up later, sounds particularly bad. No attempt to make him sound like Dennis Nedry whatsoever. I'm a little surprised this wasn't done with voice lines directly cut from the film, because other than Ian Malcolm's lines, there aren't really any that add or change anything in particular. I think you could have got by and large, just using voice lines from the actual film. Instead, it's new dialogue, and it's usually the same dialogue, but just very slightly rewritten. We meet our Brachiosaurus within a few minutes, and this scene really sells the main reason to watch this, in my opinion. It's kind of cool seeing everything in Lego. That's about it. Seeing iconic scenes like the Brachys at the lake, okay, with the wrong dinosaurs down by the lake, and a rare added joke scene as you can see one of the cars down there at the bottom being chased by Triceratops. It's pretty cool though, and with the iconic music swelling in the background, it is still an emotionally affecting scene despite being rendered in Lego. And that should tell you everything about how bloody good the original scene is and what a sucker for nostalgia I really am. We zip through, we meet Mr. DNA. Unfortunately, his tour gets cut entirely in favour of like a little cutback to Ian Malcolm and a small joke with a frog. Ian is here to help string these disparate sequences together, because given the runtime and the cuts, this thing lasts 22 minutes by the way, it's very very short. I think without him this thing would feel more like a collection of scenes rather than anything approaching a coherent film. This format of Malcolm telling a story then is a clever way to avoid that, but I do wish more had been done to play with that idea and use an unreliable narrator, or to see things more from Ian Malcolm's perspective. They do dabble with it a little bit, as we'll see soon, but not enough for my liking. This is really one of the few scenes that felt changed up to suit the Lego format, with the comedic effect of... Okay, you put it like this, it doesn't sound comedic, but the cow being brutally slaughtered. It's played up really well with cuts and zooms to the cow's increasingly terrified face. Soon after we meet Ray Arnold, not a great voice either, Dennis Nedry and the kids. We get to see the iconic Jurassic Park gates, again just cool to see it rendered in Lego if nothing else, and then we get one of my favourite Jurassic Park scenes with the sick Triceratops. This one is probably the biggest victim, however, of the truncated runtime, as it just carries absolutely none of the emotional heft of the original scene, and is instead focused nearly 100% on big pile of shit jokes, without actually having the iconic line, because, it's for kids. And it's a Lego show, so fair enough, I'm just pointing it out. After that, we get to see Dennis do his thing and hear the voice acting, oh boy. And that leads us into probably the most iconic scene of Jurassic Park. It's this or the Brachiosaurus, the Rex escape. Whilst obviously carrying none of the scariness of the original scene, they do a pretty good job of recreating the original scenes and poses that we see. The Rex roaring behind the fence, or the exact steps it makes when it steps out between the two cars. Two things I want to talk about here though. There's a scene here, of course, where Ian Malcolm is chased with a flare. I don't know why I'm saying Ian Malcolm every single time. Malcolm's chased with his flare, and it's really the only time the film really dabbles with the fun of having Malcolm narrate this thing. He goes on a bit of a spiel about how his plan worked perfectly to keep the Rex away from the kids, and it does sound like exactly the kind of thing Malcolm would have said in retrospect in an effort to protect his ego from his own stupid actions. It's a nice touch, and it's exactly the kind of thing I'd like to see a lot more of throughout this film. The other thing to note is that this is very much a production tailored for young kids, and I think that's probably why it exists in the first place. The original Jurassic Park may be too scary for like really young kids, or dare I say it, too old for some of the younger audience to enjoy now. Not all, obviously, and obviously that's nonsense, but that's inevitably how some people think. This then feels like a way to give them the backstory of Jurassic Park without them having to watch the film, and it's presented in a more agreeable format via Lego. Anyways, I ramble. The point is, Gennaro's death scene here is instead a fade to black moment. There's no screaming, there's no roaring, there's no Lego bodies being torn apart. We see Dennis and the Dilophosaurus, no mention of the Barbasol can, weirdly enough, but of course another fade to black kill. This scene plays out pretty much entirely differently, given how much it was cut down. It's a bit of a shame, but at least afterwards Malcolm does lampoon that fade to black a little bit, making some joke about how Nedry is probably hanging out with Gennaro somewhere, having a blast. The idea is that Ian Malcolm is, what I would have liked to see actually, maybe Ian Malcolm telling this story to some kids and therefore sort of censoring it along the way to kind of justify why these decisions have been made, but that's the point in general, is he's telling this to a wide audience, so he's obfuscating some of the details, shall we say. I haven't talked about the Lego effects that much because, to be honest, they just aren't that important throughout this whole thing. There's a fun repeating gag where instead of rearranging a hat or turning their head, if you think about where Grant turns Sattler's head in the car with the Brachiosaurus scene, when he first does that, it turns her hair instead, as you can do with a Lego figure, and then she has to turn herself. There's a little bit of the car falling apart. By and large, the Lego factor hasn't really played a part whatsoever. And you could do 99% of this film in just standard animation. They do finally play with it a little bit with the T-Rex chase scene though, with Rexy stamping her foot down on a rogue Lego piece that Malcolm throws out the back of the car. And as we all know, that's basically the most painful thing in existence, so it makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense as a way to rearrange this film for the Lego appropriate format. And again, this is the kind of thing I would have loved to see a lot more of throughout this production. After a beautiful image, the best in the film by miles, of the Brachiosaurus by the lake, maybe even better than the original film, as blasphemous as that sounds, it's time to rescue the kids, including a lovely homage to Nedry's screensaver, this time of course in Lego form. For some reason, the scantily clad woman in leopard print is missing though, can't imagine why. I don't really want to just keep describing what happens for the rest of this because, suffice to say, I'd basically be describing Jurassic Park, so I'm just going to flip through now some of the more iconic images you will see, the clever girl scene, the security bunker, the Le Gigante's mural, and discuss some things in general. The security bunker scene is, it's worth noting, basically it's not the security bunker, the control panel thing, basically the only notable change to the original film, in that Ray Arnold's arm doesn't appear on Ellie Sattler's shoulder. In fact, Ray Arnold himself appears again in another scene later on, alive and well. So theoretically, in this version of Jurassic Park, Ray Arnold does not die. You'll notice some of the key scenes missing here, the entire Gallimimus sequence, the raptor egg sequence, the car falling out of the tree. My personal favourite, the scene with Hammond and Sattler, they're all missing from the film entirely. And that's understandable because I think from a plot perspective, I'm not sure any of them matter that much to Jurassic Park, purely from a story and plot perspective. From a character building perspective, however, it's a pretty big shame. The Hammond and Sattler conversation about the flea circus is for me the best conversation in the entire Jurassic Park canon, and one of the few real, genuine pieces of character development and reveal that this franchise has in its entirety. But hey, Lego thing, appropriate for kids, yada yada. I'm just being old, but it makes me a little sad, you know, that we have to push the beautiful character moments aside to make jokes and to cram more action. I don't know. After a very quick final confrontation, it's over and the gang drives away from the visitor center just like in the original film. Except this time Arnold is alive, so I'm not sure where he is at this point. Feels like they've left him for dead, which, you know, seems a little mean. And that brings a close to this new unofficial retelling, except with a little twist at the end. Malcolm goes into his bookcase and rummages out another journal, saying how he prefers this one because it's all about him, and it is of course The Lost World Jurassic Park. It seems to be hinting at a sequel until Steven Spielberg turns up and steals the book away, but I still think that might be the intention. Hell, they might want to do one of these for all of the original trilogy. A way to catch newer fans up on the older iterations without asking them to sit and watch like a whole, 5 to 6 hours of film, which, craziness. I'd like to point out that I don't believe like younger generations don't have good attention spans, but I think that's what people in boardrooms probably think. Anywho, the end. If I'm super honest, this didn't do that much for me. It was neat at first, seeing things in Lego form, but beyond that, I just don't think this was made for me, you know what I mean? It didn't really feel like the Lego was used to accentuate the humour, and since all the scary and emotional moments were largely drained out, what you're instead left with isn't so much a film as a collection of somewhat empty and hollow vignettes. It'll definitely suit some people. If you enjoy it, that's great, and there were a handful of moments, like the cow with the raptor paddock, that I really enjoyed. By and large, I'm just not really sure why this exists. Why would I not just go watch Jurassic Park? They needed to play up the Lego factor a little bit, do more of the narrator, break the fourth wall a little bit, maybe even try to like explain something in the canon. You know, if they tried to explain the layout of the T-Rex paddock or something, that could have been a really cool nod. Just something for... Basically, this doesn't feel like it's made for fans of the franchise. This feels like a primer for people who are new to Jurassic Park. I think if you know Jurassic Park, you're not going to get much from this whatsoever. But it is just a fun little thing. Please don't think I'm losing my mind over here. It just wasn't made for me at the end of the day. If you're really into Lego or you must see everything Jurassic related, by all means hunt this down. 22 minutes long, it's not exactly going to eat a big chunk of your day. If you find yourself relating to my position on things generally though, I wouldn't rush to track it down ASAP. You're not missing out. In particular, I would suggest. It's a little bit of fun. It could have been cooler. That's all I'll say. But it is what it is. I still, I perfectly enjoyed my 22 minutes. I just wanted a little bit more from it. I think it could have been something special rather than just something pretty cool. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. Anyways, we'll end it there. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've seen this yourselves, please do let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If any of you happen to know how you access this outside of the US, also feel free to let me know down below and I can pin that comment and hopefully we can guide some people in the right direction. I haven't seen any way to do it, but there must be one eventually, right? Yeah, I hope you're all having a lovely Wednesday, a lovely week in general. I will see you all very, very soon. Throw me a like down below if you enjoyed this little review and discussion. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section, and I'll see you lovely folks next time. Thanks for joining me. Cheers. Much love as always. Bye-bye.
Road.